Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Hour. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to talk about something incredibly powerful. Something that separates fluent English speakers from everyone else. And it's not grammar, vocabulary, or accent. Nope. It's a simple mental habit that every fluent speaker has, and once you understand it, it can completely transform the way you learn and speak English. Now, before I reveal this habit, I want you to think about your own experience. How often do you feel stuck when speaking English? Maybe you understand everything when listening or reading, but when it's time to speak, your brain suddenly feels heavy, like words are trapped inside. Or maybe you hesitate, stumble, or even avoid conversations because you're afraid of making mistakes. I get it. I've been there. And so has every English learner I've worked with. Here's the truth: fluent English speakers aren't magic. They didn't memorize every word or phrase. They didn't spend hours perfecting their accent. What they do differently is this one mental habit: they think in English instead of translating from their native language. Yes, that's it. Sounds simple, right? But it's also the single most important habit that makes speaking English feel natural, fast, and confident. When you think in English, your brain stops being a translator. You stop pausing to decode words, and you start speaking fluidly because your thoughts and words are aligned. Let me share a story to illustrate this. I once had a student named Sarah. She was brilliant, her vocabulary was wide, she read English books daily, and she even watched movies without subtitles. But whenever she spoke, she sounded slow and hesitant. I asked her, "What are you thinking in when you speak English?" She said, "Well, I think in my language first, then I translate into English." And there it was. The problem wasn't knowledge. The problem was the translation step. Her brain was working twice as hard, and it was slowing her down. So I gave her a simple exercise: start thinking directly in English for small things. Describe your surroundings, your feelings, your plans without translating. For example, instead of thinking, "I am going to the market," in your native language and translating it, just imagine yourself thinking it in English. Day by day, she practiced this habit. At first, it felt awkward. Sometimes she forgot words. Sometimes sentences didn't come out perfectly. But over time, her speech became smoother, faster, and more natural. After a few months, she told me, "I finally feel like I'm speaking English, not translating it." That moment was a breakthrough. Here's why this habit works so well. When you translate in your head, you create a mental bottleneck. You know the words, but your brain needs extra time to convert them from one language to another. That's why even smart learners stumble or freeze. But when you think in English, your brain treats English as your native language. Your speech flows naturally, your confidence grows, and mistakes don't feel as intimidating because you're not overthinking. Now, you might be wondering, how do I actually start thinking in English? The key is consistency and practice. Start small. Describe what you're doing out loud or in your mind. For example, if you're making breakfast, narrate it. "I am cracking the eggs. I am boiling water. I am cutting the toast." You'll notice your brain begins to switch from translation mode to English mode. Next, practice imagining conversations in English. Think about how you'd order coffee, greet a friend, or explain a hobby entirely in English. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't stop to correct yourself. Just let your brain get used to forming thoughts directly in English. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. One important thing to remember is that this habit doesn't develop overnight. It takes patience, persistence, and daily practice. Fluent speakers didn't start thinking in English automatically. They trained their minds bit by bit. But once you build this habit, it becomes automatic, and that's when your fluency truly takes off. I also want to touch on mistakes for a moment. Many learners are afraid of making mistakes, and that fear can stop you from thinking in English. But here's the truth. Mistakes are a natural part of learning. Fluent speakers make them all the time. The difference is, they don't let mistakes paralyze them. They keep thinking, keep speaking, and learn from every slip. When you adopt this habit of thinking in English, mistakes feel less critical because your mind is focused on communication, not perfection. Let me share another quick story. There was a student named David who wanted to improve his spoken English for work. He spent hours memorizing phrases and vocabulary lists, but when he spoke in meetings, he froze. I asked him to try thinking in English instead of memorizing sentences. At first, he said, I can't do that. I always think in my language. I told him, just start with a few sentences a day. That's enough. He did, and after a month, he reported something amazing. I feel like I'm actually talking instead of translating. I'm thinking faster, and people actually understand me better. That's the power of this habit. So, to summarize, the Fei-1 mental habit of fluent English speakers is thinking in English. It sounds simple, but it transforms your speaking ability because it removes the translation step, builds confidence, and allows you to communicate naturally. Start with small daily exercises. Narrate your day, imagine conversations, describe what's happening around you, and let your brain practice English directly. Over time, this habit becomes automatic, and you'll notice your fluency growing faster than ever before. Remember, fluency is not about knowing every word. It's about training your mind to process and think in English. When you adopt this mental habit, speaking English becomes easier, faster, and more enjoyable. You'll make mistakes. You'll stumble sometimes, but your brain will start working like a fluent speaker's brain, and everything else will follow. Thank you for spending this time with me on the English Hour. Start practicing this habit today and notice the difference it makes in your confidence and fluency. Keep thinking in English, keep speaking, and keep believing that fluency is possible, because it absolutely is. Once your mind is ready for it, I'll see you in the next episode. Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep thinking in English.